The night broke its silence as Michael jolted awake, his phone vibrating violently against the wooden nightstand. He grabbed it, eyes narrowing as a voicemail played with a trembling voice whispering, "They know where you are," before it cut into static. He froze, heart thundering, staring at the ceiling where shadows seemed to crawl unnaturally. A piercing scream tore through the quiet, echoing from the hallway. Michael rushed toward the door, dread wrapping around him. He flung it open and found only an empty corridor stretching longer than it should. His breathing turned shallow. On the floor lay a strange metallic object, covered in unreadable symbols that pulsed faintly like veins of light. Michael muttered, "What is this?" His hand hovered near it, reluctant, yet pulled closer. The air grew colder, lights flickered above, and shadows elongated, as though watching him. He felt a presence pressing down, heavy and suffocating, marking the beginning of something he couldn't escape. Michael slammed the door shut, chest heaving, the strange object clutched tightly in his hand. The air grew colder, as though frost seeped invisibly through the walls. "This isn't real," he whispered, though the pulsing glow said otherwise. His reflection in the cracked bathroom mirror lagged behind, lips delayed like a corrupted recording. He stumbled back, panic rising. His phone replayed the voicemail unprompted, now garbled, muttering, "Michael, they're watching." He dropped the device, its screen shattering on the floor. Lights dimmed, buzzing weakly before drowning the room in heavy shadow. Michael sat on the couch, staring at the object glowing faintly on the table, the silence pressing in like a suffocating weight. Logic told him to throw it away, yet curiosity chained him still. Something inside whispered that discarding it would not free him but bind him further. The storm outside hammered against the fragile windows, thunder rolling like distant drums. Michael leaned forward, transfixed by the glowing object as faint light veins spread across its metallic surface. "It feels alive," he whispered, trembling. A sound rose above the storm, heavy dragging footsteps echoing above him, impossible as he lived on the top floor. He froze, every muscle taut, heart pounding in his throat. The sound grew louder, pacing directly overhead, dragging unnaturally. "Who's there?" he shouted into the silence. Only the howling wind answered. He turned slowly, catching sight of the cracked mirror rippling as though it were liquid. His reflection shifted unnaturally, smiling faintly, though his lips did not move. The air thickened, pressing in around him, and the room itself seemed to breathe. Michael's phone buzzed again, vibrating against the shattered floor. With shaking hands he lifted it, though dread clawed at him. The voicemail had changed, no longer a trembling human tone, but a guttural hiss whispering, "The painting waits." Each word warped, stretching unnaturally, embedding itself in his mind. He pressed the phone away from his ear, yet the sound crawled into his skull like venom. "Painting," he muttered, terror blooming as curiosity gnawed. A lightning strike darkened the room momentarily before light returned, and the object flared brighter. Blue runes projected symbols across the cracked ceiling, twisting into jagged shapes. Michael stumbled back, clutching his head, unable to escape the suffocating presence now blooming within his apartment. Driven by compulsion, Michael snatched a notebook, scribbling the glowing runes onto paper. His hand shook violently, pen scratching furiously, as if the symbols wrote themselves. "I've seen this before," he murmured, though no memory surfaced. The runes crawled on the page, shifting positions like living ink. Sweat trickled down his temple as the silence thickened, broken only by the frantic scribble of pen on paper. He gasped as exhaustion weighed on him, yet he could not stop. Suddenly, a loud thud rattled the front door. He froze, the pen dropping with a clatter. Another strike followed, louder, shaking the hinges. "Someone's here," he whispered, though deep down he knew it wasn't someone. It was something. Morning crept into Michael's apartment, pale light struggling through rain-streaked glass. He sat slumped on the couch, the cursed object resting on the table like a predator at ease. Sleep had not come, only fragments of hallucinations that gnawed at him. When he finally stirred, he muttered, "I need answers." The thought of the strange voicemail and the whisper about the painting returned, twisting his stomach. He gathered his jacket, slipped the object into his bag, and stepped into the wet streets. The city felt alien, every face suspicious, every shadow alive. A nearby paper stand displayed an article about the museum reopening its forbidden exhibit. Michael froze. The headline read, "A Portrait Unearthed." His pulse quickened. Something told him the painting was waiting, and the object was a key. The museum loomed ahead, its stone facade glistening under the drizzle. Gargoyles crouched like silent guards. Michael hesitated, clutching his bag tighter. Inside, the lobby echoed with distant footsteps and murmurs, though few visitors had braved the storm. His shoes squeaked against marble as he crossed to the information desk. A clerk looked up, eyes hollow, voice monotone. "The exhibit is downstairs, newly uncovered works." Michael nodded, unease crawling down his spine. He descended into the basement gallery, air growing colder with every step. The walls bore cracks, the lights dimmer. He whispered, "Why does it feel like it's waiting for me?" as the faint hum of an unseen presence followed him deeper into the shadows. The basement gallery stretched silent, lined with dim lamps that flickered weakly. Michael's breath misted in the unnatural cold. Paintings lined the walls, their subjects half faded, eyes seeming to follow him. He stopped when he saw it, the cursed painting. A dark portrait of a man cloaked in shadow, eyes blazing unnaturally bright. The background swirled with abstract figures, twisted in agony. Michael whispered, "It's him." His pulse pounded as he felt the same energy from the object vibrating in his bag. The air thickened, pressing against his chest. For a moment, the painted figure's lips curved, a faint grin spreading across its face. Michael staggered back, shaking his head. "No, that's not possible." As Michael stepped closer, he heard footsteps echoing faintly behind him. He turned to see a figure emerge from the shadows, a woman in a dark trench coat, her gaze steady and unreadable. She said softly, "You shouldn't be here." Michael stiffened. "Who are you?" She ignored the question, eyes flicking to the painting, voice low. "It knows you now." Fear clawed at him, but curiosity pushed harder. "You've seen it before," he accused. Her lips curved faintly, a smirk without warmth. "I've seen too much," she whispered. Then she stepped back, vanishing into the gloom as though swallowed whole. Michael stood trembling, realizing he had just encountered someone who knew the truth, yet refused to reveal it. Michael turned back to the painting, but his vision blurred as if the world warped around it. The tortured figures seemed to writhe, their mouths opening in silent screams. He staggered, clutching the railing, breath ragged. The runes from the object pulsed in his mind, overlaying the canvas, glowing symbols merging with brushstrokes. He gasped, realizing the painting was not just art but a gateway. His reflection appeared in the glass covering, but it did not mimic him. Instead, it leaned forward, smiling faintly, whispering in his own voice, "You belong here." Michael recoiled, stumbling back until his shoulder hit the wall. Sweat drenched his skin as the echo of his false reflection repeated the phrase again, louder, until it dissolved into static. Michael staggered out of the basement gallery, his pulse racing, breath ragged, sweat chilling his skin. The cursed painting still burned in his vision, like an afterimage seared into his mind. He leaned against the cold stone wall, whispering, "It's real, it's all real." His bag vibrated faintly, the object inside responding to the painting's pull. He pressed his forehead against the wall, desperate for clarity, when a voice echoed softly behind him. "You shouldn't have touched it." He spun, heart thudding, to find a man in a janitor's uniform, leaning on a mop. His eyes, though tired, held an uncanny sharpness. Michael demanded, "What do you know?" The man simply smirked, muttering, "Too much." Then he vanished into the stairwell, leaving Michael trembling with the weight of truths withheld. Michael forced himself into the museum's public reading room, shelves of dusty archives looming in silence. He dropped into a chair, rifling through ancient catalogues left scattered across the table. His hands trembled as he searched, the cursed object pulsing inside his bag. He found an old article clipping, "The Vanishing of Elias Crane, 1893. The portrait artist had disappeared under mysterious circumstances after completing a final painting." Michael muttered, "Elias Crane, this is him." His fingers brushed a faded sketch stapled to the page. The face matched the cursed painting exactly. His chest tightened as if invisible hands squeezed his lungs. A librarian passed quietly, glancing at him with subtle unease before vanishing back into the rows of shelves. Hours passed as rain battered the museum windows. Michael's head pounded as he pieced fragments together. Elias Crane, the painting, and the whispered prophecy. He whispered, "The painting takes what it sees." Suddenly, the temperature dropped, his breath fogging in the reading room. The lights flickered and died, plunging him into cold shadow. A figure appeared across the table. A young man with hollow eyes and lips sewn shut. Michael gasped, stumbling back as the apparition leaned forward, hand outstretched. The stitched mouth twitched as though trying to speak. Michael grabbed his bag, backing toward the exit. His heart slammed against his ribs, mind screaming that this was no dream. The silence shattered with the sound of pages rustling by unseen hands. Michael stumbled into the museum's stairwell, gasping, his footsteps echoing against concrete. He clutched the rail, pulling himself up toward the storm-filled street above. A voice called from behind, calm yet urgent, "You've seen too much to turn back." He turned to see the mysterious woman from the gallery, her trench coat dripping rain though she hadn't left. "Who are you?" he demanded. She approached slowly, eyes glinting in the half-light. "A survivor," she answered. Her gaze lingered on his bag. "And that thing you carry doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the painting." Michael held the strap tighter, panic mixing with defiance. "Then tell me what it is," he pleaded. Her lips pressed thin, silence heavy, before she vanished into the shadows once more. Michael burst out into the storm, rain pounding his face, streets gleaming with neon reflections. He ran aimlessly, fear clawing every thought, until he collapsed against a lamppost. The cursed object in his bag throbbed like a second heartbeat. He opened it, staring at the runes glowing against the rain-slicked darkness. They pulsed brighter, and for a fleeting moment he saw distorted faces trapped inside the light, screaming silently. Michael shut the bag quickly, trembling. "I can't carry this alone," he whispered, realization settling like ice. He scanned the street, convinced the shadows were moving with intent, hunting him. A flicker of light drew his eyes, a small bookstore still open across the street, its dim sign flickering. Something urged him inside. Michael pushed open the creaking bookstore door, a bell jingling faintly as he stepped into the dim, dusty air. Shelves towered above him, filled with tomes smelling of mildew and secrets. Behind the counter sat an older man hunched over a ledger, his face sharp, his eyes too knowing. He looked up and said, "You've brought it here." Michael froze, clutching his bag. "How do you know?" The man smirked, closing the book with deliberate care. "Because that thing has been waiting for someone like you." Michael swallowed hard, dread flooding his chest. The clerk rose slowly, every movement heavy with gravity, and pointed toward a locked cabinet at the back. "You want the truth? It starts there." Michael followed the man to the locked cabinet, its glass fogged with age. The old man fumbled with keys, muttering under his breath. When the lock clicked open, he pulled out a thick leather-bound journal, worn and cracking at the edges. "Elias Crane's personal writings," he whispered. Michael's pulse quickened. He flipped through brittle pages filled with sketches of faces twisted in pain, runes identical to those on the object. "He painted them," Michael breathed. The old man nodded grimly. "Not painted, in prison." Michael's stomach churned, realization dawning that the tortured souls were not symbols, but lives sealed within canvas and ink. The book's final page bore a single phrase scrawled in jagged ink: "The painting feeds." Michael's hands shook as he turned another page, his throat dry. The drawings revealed victims, their faces eerily familiar. His breath hitched when he recognized one, the stitched-mouthed apparition from the library. "I saw him," he whispered. The old man's eyes narrowed, voice low. "Then it has already chosen you." Michael staggered back, panic rising. "What do you mean chosen?" The man's voice cracked like dry wood. "It pulls in those who stare too long. Their essence becomes part of it. Yours is already bleeding into the canvas." Michael gripped the journal, heart hammering, feeling the truth wrap around him like chains. He whispered, "No, I can fight it," but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. The shop's front bell rang, and Michael stiffened as a figure entered. It was the woman in the trench coat, her presence heavy, her expression unreadable. The old man glared at her, spitting. "You again?" She ignored him, fixing her eyes on Michael. "I told you it knows you now," she said coldly. Michael demanded, "Who are you?" Her lips parted, and for the first time her voice softened. "I was its keeper, until I failed." The words struck like lightning. Michael staggered back, realization slamming into him. She had lived through this curse before. The old man snarled, "She's dangerous," but Michael couldn't look away. The woman's eyes shimmered with both guilt and sorrow as she whispered, "It will take everything from you." Michael's mind spun as the woman stepped closer, lowering her voice. "The painting doesn't just trap souls, it trades them." His heart pounded. Trades? For what? Her gaze flicked to the glowing bag at his side. "Freedom." Michael shook his head, horror dawning. "You mean, it feeds on us?" The old man slammed his hand on the counter, voice sharp. "She gave it victims once. Don't believe her." The woman's eyes darkened with shame. "I survived because someone else didn't." Michael felt the walls close in, both truths crushing him. The cursed object pulsed brightly in his bag, as if eager for his decision. His voice cracked. "Then why me?" she whispered, "because it always chooses the one who resists the most." Michael stormed out of the bookstore into the rain, his thoughts unraveling like frayed wires. Every shadow seemed alive, every whisper of wind another voice calling his name. He pressed his bag tighter, feeling the cursed object vibrating like a second heart. The woman's words haunted him. It trades souls. His legs carried him aimlessly until he found himself near a boarded-up church, its stained glass fractured and glowing faintly from lightning flashes. He stepped inside, seeking refuge, but the silence pressed heavier than the storm. Rows of decaying pews stretched before him, and at the altar lay a single candle, flickering though no hand had lit it. Michael whispered, "Why me?" But the echo carried the words back in a voice not his own. Michael knelt at the altar, staring at the lone candle's flame as it sputtered unnaturally, bending toward him as if alive. He placed the bag on the stone surface, unzipping it slowly. The cursed object glowed faintly, casting distorted shadows across the walls. For a moment he saw figures kneeling in the pews, ghostly outlines, heads bowed in silent prayer, their mouths sewn shut. His chest tightened as he whispered, "I can't do this alone." A creak echoed behind him. He turned sharply to see a man in a worn police uniform, eyes bloodshot, face lined with guilt. "You should have left it buried," the officer said hoarsely. Michael demanded, "Who are you?" The man's answer came like a confession. "I kept the secret. I let it spread." The officer limped forward, rain dripping from his uniform, gun holstered but useless. "I thought hiding it would save lives," he muttered, voice heavy with shame. Michael stood, anger flaring. "You knew what it was and let people suffer?" The man's eyes flickered with torment. "Orders came from above. We were told to protect it, not destroy it." Michael shook his head in disbelief, gripping the glowing object. "You're part of this curse." The officer looked at him with hollow resignation. "I'm already part of it," he said quietly, pulling back his sleeve to reveal runes etched into his skin, glowing faintly like scars. Michael recoiled, dread tightening his chest as he realized the painting had already claimed pieces of him. Michael staggered backward, whispering, "It's inside you." The officer nodded grimly. "And soon inside you too." Michael's pulse thundered, the church walls creaking as unseen pressure mounted. Suddenly the front doors slammed shut, trapping them in. The shadows deepened, peeling from the corners as though alive. The officer raised his gun, but the metal dissolved in his hand, melting into smoke. He screamed in pain, clutching his palm as the weapon dripped away. Michael backed toward the altar, clutching the object, desperate. The whispers filled the church now, hundreds of voices, overlapping, crying, chanting, warning. Michael shouted over them, "Tell me how to stop it." The officer fell to his knees, weeping. "There is no stopping it, only trading places." The whispers grew deafening until Michael thought his skull would crack. Then in the chaos, one voice cut clear, his own. It came from the cursed object, echoing words he hadn't spoken aloud. "Trade and be free." He dropped the bag, horrified, watching the runes pulse brighter, faces within the glow screaming silently. The officer crawled toward it, desperation etched on his face. "Give it to me," he begged. Michael shook his head violently, fear battling pity. The man's eyes widened, voice cracking. "I can take your place." For a moment Michael considered, sweat pouring down his face. Then lightning shattered the stained glass, shards raining down like blades. And both men were bathed in unnatural blue light. The shattered glass glittered on the stone floor like frozen tears as Michael backed away, clutching the cursed object. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the officer writhing on the ground, his runes glowing like firebrands. He screamed, "It's taking me!" Shadows peeled from the walls, crawling toward him like living tar. Michael's mind reeled, torn between saving him or fleeing. The object burned in his hand, searing into his palm. He gasped, trying to hurl it away, but it clung like a parasite. The officer locked eyes with him, voice breaking, "Don't let it trade me for you." Michael stumbled, hearing whispers overlapping into a deafening chant. The walls trembled, as if the entire church were breathing, pulling them both into its cursed heart. The cursed object pulsed violently, light spilling across the broken pews, painting the ghostly figures clearer. They weren't outlines anymore, but twisted bodies pressed against invisible walls, their mouths open in eternal screams. Michael cried out, "Stop!" His voice cracked, lost in the roar of phantom cries. The officer reached for the object, desperation in his eyes. But the moment his fingers brushed it, his skin blistered and smoke hissed upward. He collapsed, coughing blood, his voice hoarse. "It wants you, not me." Michael dropped to his knees, tears streaming as the faces inside the glow pressed harder, their eyes meeting his, pleading, accusing. The runes shifted into words he could finally read. "The chosen must enter." His stomach turned to ice. The air thickened until every breath felt like drowning. Michael staggered to his feet, vision blurring as the church warped around him. The pews twisted into crooked silhouettes, the candle flames stretching into a burning tower. From the shadows emerged Elias Crane himself, the figure from the painting, cloaked in darkness, eyes glowing with merciless fire. Michael whispered, "It's you." Crane's lips curved into a grin. "You stared too long." Michael stumbled back, clutching the object as Crane advanced, each step echoing like thunder. The officer sobbed, crawling away, his voice faint. "It's too late." Crane lifted a skeletal hand, and the runes on the object burned brighter, searing Michael's skin as though branding him. His scream echoed through the hollow church. Michael fell against the altar, his palm scorched, object glowing like molten steel. Crane's voice thundered, "Enter the canvas or they will take you." The faces inside the glow screamed louder, pressing against the veil. Michael's chest heaved as the officer collapsed near the door, sobbing. "Don't fight it," he cried. Michael shouted back, "If I go in, it ends." Crane tilted his head, smile widening. "For you, yes. For them, never." Michael's resolve cracked. The woman from the gallery appeared suddenly in the doorway, her face pale, soaked with rain. "Don't listen," she screamed. "It lies. The trade never ends." Michael's world spun, one voice promising freedom, the other warning damnation. Both truths poisoned him. The object pulsed one last time, vibrating like a heart ready to burst. Michael screamed, raising it above his head, torn between hurling it away or pressing it to the painting that burned in his mind. Crane's voice roared, "Choose!" The officer sobbed, "Let me take it." The woman cried, "Destroy it." The walls cracked, dust raining from the ceiling, lightning searing through the stained glass holes. Michael's body shook violently as the runes wrapped around his arms, glowing like chains. He shouted, "Enough!" and slammed the object onto the altar. The entire church convulsed, shadows collapsing inward, faces shrieking, Crane's form exploding into smoke. Michael collapsed to his knees, chest heaving, the object dark and still at last, or so it seemed. Dust choked the air as silence fell over the ruined church. Michael collapsed beside the altar, body trembling, chest heaving. The cursed object lay dark and lifeless, scorched as though burned from within. The officer slumped against the wall, pale, bleeding, whispering incoherently. The woman in the trench coat stepped inside, her gaze sweeping across the devastation. For a fleeting moment, Michael believed it was over. He gasped, "It's finished." But her face hardened, sorrow filling her eyes. "It never ends," she said quietly. Michael's relief cracked into despair. As the silence grew oppressive once more, the faint sound of whispering already curling at the edges of the air, too soft, yet unmistakably real. Michael pushed himself upright, gripping the altar for balance, his breath ragged. "Tell me what happens now," he demanded. The woman looked at him with hollow eyes. "You've carried it too long. Pieces of you remain inside." Michael staggered back, shaking his head. "No, I destroyed it." Her voice sharpened, slicing through the silence. "You only fed it." The officer groaned from the floor, coughing blood. "It'll take him," he rasped, pointing at Michael. Fear clawed at Michael's chest, realization dawning that he hadn't escaped but become bound tighter. The runes scarred into his skin still glowed faintly, pulsing with his heartbeat. He whispered, "It's inside me." The woman didn't deny it. Michael stumbled out into the storm, rain washing blood and dust from his face. The streets were eerily empty, neon signs flickering like failing stars. He dragged his feet across puddles reflecting broken light, every step heavier than the last. His reflection rippled in the water, but it didn't move as he did. Instead, it stared back at him, lips curling into a grin. Michael froze, whispering, "No." The reflection raised its hand, pressing a palm against the surface, runes glowing across its skin, brighter than his own. Michael staggered back, heart pounding, but every puddle around him filled with countless reflections, each staring, each grinning, each whispering in his voice, "Train!" Michael fled into an alley, pressing his back to the cold bricks, rain dripping over him. The whispers grew louder, layered over each other until his skull throbbed. The woman's voice echoed in his memory. It trades souls. His hand trembled as he pulled the object from his bag, but it wasn't lifeless anymore. The runes blazed again, brighter than ever, faces screaming silently within the glow. Michael screamed, "Leave me alone!" Lightning split the sky, and for an instant, the alley stretched impossibly long, filled with shadowed figures pressing forward, reaching for him. His legs gave out as he dropped to his knees, tears mixing with the rain. Michael's scream was swallowed by thunder as the runes seared brighter, crawling up his arms, branding his chest. His reflection in a broken shop window stepped forward, moving freely, lips whispering in perfect sync with his thoughts. "You belong here." Michael dropped the object, but it hovered mid-air, spinning as light engulfed the alley. For a moment, he saw Elias Crane's face in the glow, smiling with victory. The world collapsed into static, sound fading, time itself slowing. When silence returned, the alley was empty. No Michael, no object, only rain and darkness. On the wet pavement, a single torn page from Elias Crane's journal lay plastered to the ground. Written across it in jagged ink, the painting feeds.